We are Southeastern 14, continuing our preview series for Week 10 of SEC football. Of course, we preview every game in the SEC, the whole football season. I am joined by Blake Lovell and the artist formerly known as Blayne Gilmer as we talk Tennessee and Georgia in the next iteration of best and most anticipated game of the college football season, and these frequently seem to involve the Vols.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they're must-watch television right now. It's definitely something that keeps you excited to watch because of that tempo, that pace, and now they get to take the show on the road, so to speak, because the big games have been at Neyland, with Florida coming in there, with Alabama coming in there, with Kentucky coming in there. Now they get to go to Athens, Blake, and see if they can keep that same frenetic pace up on offensively.
Yes, our newest game of the year. We had one obviously a couple weeks ago with Tennessee, Alabama. Now we get Tennessee, Georgia. That's good to have, isn't it, guys? People who cover the SEC. It's nice to have a couple games of the year before we're even going into Week 10 here. So, yeah, it's just, I mean, this is everything I think we could have wanted in terms of just a matchup here and having these two teams where they're at right now. You know, this is one we circled before the season started and said, this could realistically be your game that decides the SEC East winner. And even then, I don't know that we could have expected things to be where they actually are right now with the top two teams in the country from the AP standpoint, Georgia and Tennessee here, getting a chance to duke it out in Week 10 in the middle of the season, right? Like you're talking about two teams that realistically could play for the national championship here going at each other. It's going to just be, it's going to be wild.
Well, gentlemen, I'm looking at the ESPN app. This game is in Sanford Stadium, and you can get tickets for as low as $534. I think I will instead be watching this one at home at 2:30 Central on CBS, but my goodness, this is going to be a crazy game. I'm very interested to see what tickets are going to go for on the secondary market. I mean, that's the low point. My goodness.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the ticket to get, and not quite as many available because I'm sure Tennessee fans will bring up that there's 100 billion thousand people that get packed into Neyland Stadium, and Georgia only has a mere 93,000. But I think that those 93,000 will be loud, and I think it'll be a great environment for college football. And listen, 3:30. There's no better spot. Enjoy it now, people who are SEC purists, because this is going away. The CBS, the 3:30, all that. So enjoy this moment because it's a classic one, Blake.
Yeah, it is for sure. There's so many different parts to this matchup, and like, why even wait now? Like, Chris, let's just go right in because there's so many things to consider. I think in this game, when you look at both sides, it's just going to be fascinating to kind of dive into the numbers here.
Well, when Tennessee has the ball, I'm going to throw some stats out there, and I'll probably screw something up at some point because the numbers are so staggering, they make your head spin after a while. Tennessee is scoring 49.4 a game, Georgia giving up 10.5. Tennessee has lost 6 fumbles. Georgia has recovered 3. Tennessee has only thrown 2 picks. Georgia has picked 6. Vols have given up 13 sacks. Georgia has registered 10. We take sacks out of run plays and pass plays. Tennessee per game, we think of the Vols as throwing the ball with Hendon Hooker. They actually run on average 42 rush plays a game and only throw 33. Teams are only running 25 rush plays against Georgia on average and throwing at 33. So huge difference in tempo. Tennessee actually runs 17 more plays a game than Georgia's defense is accustomed to being on the field for. It'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. Tennessee per run play averaging 5.0, Georgia giving up 3.8. Per pass play, the Vols, and again, this is including sacks, averaging a staggering 10.5 yards a throw. Georgia giving up exactly half that at 5.2. My goodness, this is the side of things that we can't wait to see.
Yeah, I mean it's the classic, matchup in terms of the elite defense. Still, yeah, Georgia kind of is a victim of their own success. As if you look ahead to next year at Tennessee's offense, when Tennessee fans are complaining if they're not scoring 49.2 points per game, they'll be a victim of their own success, right? The same thing with Georgia. They're a victim of their own success in terms of just how staggering that defense was last year, but still statistically it's elite, and they just don't have 15 NFL guys or so that were there a couple years ago or last year. But Hendon Hooker is in complete command of this offense. He seems like he knows every facet of it. He's a graduate, and is able to spend a lot of time with the coaching staff, as you heard Fowler and Herbstreit talk about it that game with Kentucky. So very much so in the coach on the field type role. And it's going to be incumbent upon Georgia to find ways to make him not be able to get to his first read, not have the wide open bust early that you've seen Tennessee manufacture with different people. And hey, this is a matchup you like to see, Blake, with the offensive mind of Josh Heupel against the defensive mind of the brain trust that is Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, and Glenn Schumann.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is just the matchup itself, and I've said, you guys have heard me say many times, just in terms of, it's not just watching Tennessee, execute the way they execute. It's watching their play calling too. Like, it's just, I think the way Josh Heupel calls plays, and we saw that some in the Kentucky game, right? Like we mentioned, Chris, I think we're talking about just the frustration of a Mark Stoops trying to figure out defensively how to, we got to get our guys subbed in. We've got to get all this stuff figured out. And it's so hard to replicate. And I think that's something, when you think about this game, a lot of people, and Blayne, I know, has heard this. It's a lot of people are talking about Georgia's defense, and a lot of people are saying, well, look at the offenses they face, right? Because if you really look at the SEC offenses, but again, we can't forget they beat Oregon to the poor Ducks, right? I love a good duck, but that was did not
got
go
them
well
roasted after that game.
did not go well for them in game one.
Nick says it'd be different if they faced right now, by the way.
Well, I think they'd score more than 3, but I don't know how much more. We'll see about that. But again, if we look at it and try to find some sort of parallel into, Kirby Smart, as we always say, fantastic in terms of defensively and what they can do. But, South Carolina, Missouri, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Florida, obviously none of those teams are going to compare to what a Tennessee can do. And that is kind of the theme I've always talked about, I feel like, with Tennessee this year, is just the replicating what they can do if you're a defense. And I think that is the biggest challenge for everyone when you're going up against this team that are putting up these video game type numbers, and the fact that they do get Cedric Tillman back. Because I think, Chris, something you pointed out last week was, it's not just the fact that they're getting him back, it's that the impact that has on a Jalen Hyatt to still be able to do what he's doing, knowing that you still have McCoy, you still have Tillman to deal with. And it's like Hyatt, we saw what he did against Kentucky. So I just think that 3-headed monster right there, in terms of just the wide receiver group, and the fact that, and I don't know, how effective that'll be against Georgia here in this game, because as we keep saying, we know what Georgia's defense can do, especially preventing yards on the ground. But, Tennessee has run the ball pretty effectively too, in terms of what they've done when they've had those opportunities. So all those things to say that, honestly, guys, I don't know how this matchup turns out in terms of these two going up against each other, but I know there couldn't be a more salivating one if you're a football fan looking at this offense going up against this defense.
Blayne, boy, there's a bunch of things I want to get to here, but I guess the first thing is, does Nolan Smith play in this one? He's had a shoulder issue. He left the Florida game early. Do you think he plays? If he doesn't, how does that impact things?
I mean, I think he will, just because of the sheer magnitude of this game, and Nolan is going to do it unless he is just absolutely injured to the point where he just cannot go. But I'm saying, if it's a pain tolerance type deal, if it's a slight shoulder separation, there were rumblings that he could have come back in that game if it weren't 28-3 at halftime against Florida. That was precautionary. So time will tell. You're not going to figure anything out with Kirby Smart until it's kickoff time on Saturday. He will play that very close to the vest. But if that does happen, what you're going to see is you're going to see Robert Beal's snap numbers go up, because people got to remember, Georgia rotates their defensive front and their edge guys a ton. So you're going to see Robert Beal's snap count go up. You're going to see Mykel Williams' snap count go up. Mykel Williams is productive of a freshman edge rusher that Georgia's had in a while in terms of hurries, sacks, all that kind of stuff. I mean, true freshman that plays well. Chas Chambliss came in and played a little bit, but I think you're going to see you'll see some creativity there. But I also think that the pressure is not going to be dependent on edge pressure. With Tennessee, they get rid of the ball so quick. It's going to be Jalen Carter who is going to be relied upon to get the pressure. He only played in third downs. They were kind of just easing him back into it, but he responded well. And Blake, they're saying that Jalen Carter, who is by all accounts going to be a top 5 pick, is going to be full go for that Tennessee game.
Well, and that obviously presents another challenge, doesn't it? Because knowing what he's capable of and the dramatic difference that can have when he's, like you said, especially being able to get some of that pressure, being able to, do the kind of things that, quite honestly, guys, we just haven't seen anybody else be able to do to Tennessee. And I think that's why, again, this is so interesting, is just because we've kind of said, like, they have just been this unstoppable sort of force in terms of their offense. And I think that's what makes this so good, is that we have not seen, we keep saying Georgia hasn't seen a Tennessee offense, but a Tennessee now to this point has not seen a Georgia defense, in terms of this particular matchup that we're going to see here. And, we kind of talked about the Alabama comparisons, right? But I think we all agree in terms of where this Georgia defense is at right now versus where the Alabama defense is at right now. I've seen a lot of people mention that as well, being like, well, it should be automatic that Tennessee's going to put up 52 points because they put up 52 points against Alabama. I don't think we can use that mathematical equation here, Chris, because I think this is a little bit different. So,
yeah, going to be interesting on the other side of the ball too. And there's some other things I do want to circle back to later, maybe on this side of the matchup. But before we do all that, a lot of big games coming up in the SEC this week. And to add some extra excitement, we at Southeastern 14 will be making plenty of predictions in the Stakes app. That is spelled STAKES. We want to hear if you guys agree or disagree with our takes. So go to playwithstakes.com/14. Sign up for Stakes. Place your predictions, whether you are for or against what we pick. And by we, I mean me. I'm usually the one putting those in there for us. So if you use the invite code Southeastern14 when you sign up, you'll get a double welcome bonus. The app is free to join, free to play. It's not a betting app. It's a predictions app. You can win NFTs. You can brag when you beat us. What's not to like? Go have some fun in the Stakes app. Let us know about it if you beat us, and help out the folks who help us out here at Southeastern 14. Okay. Tennessee is on defense. The Vols really just shut down Will Levis in Kentucky. 3 picks in that game. 6 points given up. For the season, Tennessee only giving up 21 points a game. Georgia scoring 41.8. Georgia prefers, again, we take sacks out of this. It is running 35 run plays a game and 38 pass plays. Teams are throwing 46 times on average and running 29 against the Vols. Again, that's adjusted for sacks. Also, teams are playing behind against Tennessee the whole game for the most part, so that probably affects that balance. Tennessee has picked off, 9 passes. Georgia has thrown 6 picks. Bulldogs have lost 6 fumbles. The Vols have coughed it up 8 times. That's a lot. And per running play, Tennessee's defense giving up 3.8, Georgia averaging 6.0, Georgia averaging 8.4 per pass play. And now we get to the most controversial topic of them all, Tennessee's pass defense. But Blayne is going to have a stand on this, and he's in his own way not wrong. But just think about this. Tennessee's only giving up 6.1 yards per pass play because It's got 21 sacks. Again, the raw numbers are not going to be great for the Vols because of how many plays are run. I know you were going to point out, Blayne, Tennessee's the only team to really get torched by Anthony Richardson all year. You've seen that happen a couple other times with the Vols this year. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Tennessee or how Georgia attacks Tennessee, and I would expect that would include Stetson Bennett putting the ball in the air a good bit. And Tennessee's defense, too, against the run was really good against Kentucky, and I think has really showed up well at times.
Yeah, I agree. But here's the thing. When I say my title there says I was wrong about Kentucky, I wasn't wrong about Tennessee. Okay, I wasn't wrong about Tennessee's offense and Kentucky's ability to slow down that. I never said they were going to totally stop them, but there were several times after a sudden change or something like that where Kentucky defensively was able to limit Tennessee to field goals or get outright punts and stops. What the problem was Kentucky's offense stalled out, and that is a credit to Tennessee's defense. They stepped up and played very well in that game. To your point, Tennessee is very, when you look at the raw numbers, they're good at getting home and sacking the quarterback. But against who have they done that? Go look at the Florida game, 1 sack. Go look at the Alabama game, 1 sack. If they are not able to sack Stetson Bennett in this game, then I like Georgia's chance to move the football on the Tennessee defense. And if you look at this, Georgia, Blake pointed out that Georgia might be the best defense that Tennessee's seen. Well, Georgia's probably the best offensive line that Tennessee has seen. They've only allowed 7 sacks on the year. Stetson Bennett, say what you want about if he makes a questionable throw here and there, he is standing back there untouched. So if Tennessee's front is able to manufacture pressure on Stetson Bennett, then they will deservedly win the game. But I think they're going to have to rush more than 4 to get the pressure. And then if you blitz Stetson Bennett, he's proven to be one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz, especially last year in the playoffs. So I think that's the catch-22 for Tennessee's defense in this one. I do think they played much better and forced Will Levis into some mistakes. They also had a raucous crowd at Neyland Stadium behind them. So we'll see how that translates to Sanford Stadium. We know the offense is going to travel wherever. I believe the offense will. Defense, different story. We'll see. Blake, what are your thoughts on this Tennessee defense?
Well, you said, I mean, you pointed out a lot of things that I have on my notes here in terms of like one of the reasons Tennessee was able to do what they did against Kentucky was because of their ability to wreak havoc defensively and to cause some of those issues. But I circled the stat number you talk about on the sacks with Georgia too, and just knowing what this offensive line, their ability to prevent other teams from wreaking havoc on them will be the biggest. Quite frankly, I mean, look, there's a lot of big keys to this game, right? But I think that is one of the biggest ones because, like you said, Blayne, I think if Tennessee is not able to get that pressure, and Stetson Bennett is able to kind of, throw the ball and get the ball where he wants it. I mean, that's the thing I think we forget sometimes. It's like, yes, we've all talked about Tennessee, and of course I have a lot, and deservedly so in terms of their offense. But I feel like that was one of the things too, where even going into that Alabama game, you have to remember, even as dominant as Georgia has been defensively, their offense has been really good. And like, I think it's sometimes, you have to keep that in mind here, is that you're not just playing a team where the only matchup we're focused on is just the Tennessee offense against the Georgia defense, because that is the most, like, that's the sexiest one, right? Because of how great Tennessee's been offensively and how great Georgia's been defensively. But like I said, you can't just ignore the fact that Georgia on offense can be great too. They just may do it in a little bit of a different way because, like we said, I think it's so hard to replicate a Tennessee offense. But like Georgia, when you look at their numbers, I mean, this is still a team that's putting up points. And like Blayne said, I think that's where Tennessee's ability to get to Stetson Bennett to perhaps cause some of those issues, that's a big part of this, because I think if it's just, sit back and Georgia does what they want to do, then yes, I think that's going to put a lot of pressure, obviously, on this Tennessee defense.
Well, we talk about matchups a lot and the problems Tennessee gives people. Georgia's got a guy in its own right who's a bit of a headache. Brock Bowers is one of the best tight ends I've ever seen. He just makes. I mean, he can take one the length of the field on about any snap. I'm very curious, Blayne, to see how Tennessee game plans against him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody can, just like you can only hope to contain Tennessee's offense because of their tempo and stuff. I don't think anybody can just totally shut down Brock Bowers if Georgia is, hell bent on getting him the football, because he's too good. They can get him in different ways, whether it's running the ball, jet sweeps, whether it's in the play action game, whether it's lining him up out at wide receiver and putting him on a corner, throwing fades into the end zone. I mean, there's so many ways. The young man, if he'd came out last year after his freshman year, he probably could have been a first-round NFL draft pick. I mean, that's how good he is, and that's not an exaggeration. There's plenty of people that say that. So that is the X factor for Georgia. Also, it is they kind of thought last week that AD Mitchell may get back to where he would be capable of playing against that Florida game. He did make the trip. He did do some warm-up stuff, but he didn't play in that game versus Florida. They already have Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers, who are mismatches. If you're able to add AD Mitchell back to the offense, that's a big plus for Stetson Bennett, somebody who is very comfortable with AD Mitchell, as you saw in the national championship game last year. So, here's the thing. They're both of these offenses, Blake, have components that, like I said, you're not going to totally shut down. It's just how successful can you be at limiting them?
Yeah. Limiting those opportunities for those big plays. And again, we know there's big plays. You just talked about Bowers. We've talked about the Tennessee trio. Obviously what Georgia can do in the run. Like, there's so many different facets to these two offenses. And I think, Chris, we always say it, like, this is one where, I think the turnovers numbers here too. Like, this is the kind of game where one turnover, right, can completely change the complexion, even though both teams can put up that, the amount of points. And so, Tennessee's the road team here. And I know something too, Chris will bring up if he hasn't already, and I just forgot about it, but the penalties are something as well that I think you think about in a game like this on the road, which is kind of the same thing we talked about with Alabama, right? When they went on the road to Tennessee, we said, man, look at how many penalties. And what was it? I don't remember what the crazy stat was. I think they had like 7 in the first 7 minutes, or they had 7, I think, in the first 7 minutes of the game or something like that. So like, those are the kind of things too, that now that you're flipping it on Tennessee, that's something to keep in mind as well, as it's sort of that intangible perhaps.
Well, let's talk about those intangibles, or maybe not intangibles because you can measure these things, but they're miscellaneous stats is a better way to put it. Tennessee is one of the more penalized teams in the league, 74 yards a game. Georgia, one of the least penalized teams, 39. FEI ranks special teams. It usually lags a week behind. So going into last weekend's matchups, Tennessee ranked 43 in special teams, Georgia 38. Strength of schedule, Jeff Sagarin's got the Vols at 47, Georgia at 50. Tennessee's got a weird schedule in that it really gets dragged down by playing Ball State and Akron, which are probably two of the worst teams in the FBS. Akron, one of the worst 5, and then UT Martin, which is an okay FCS team. And back to the special teams, Chase McGrath has struggled at times, missed an extra point against Kentucky. Special teams usually in the kicking game, usually a very strength of most Georgia teams. So anyway, I don't know what y'all's thoughts are on special teams and such, but and penalties, but that's something that's worth watching, I think, here in what looks like a pretty evenly matched game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia has the better field goal kicker. I know that Tennessee made one at the end of the game, but Jack Podlesny is rock solid. Like I feel like Georgia, if it comes down to a field goal, I think Georgia ends up being more confident in the special teams. But listen, neither one of these teams, Chris, are both they're like two of like 7 teams in the country who've punted like less than 20 times on the year. They both average 2.1 punt attempts per game. Okay, that is unbelievable how little these teams punt. Okay, so it might be a week where if you got a punt block dialed up, go ahead and practice it, because the punt team hadn't practiced their protection a whole lot except in practice. So go ahead and dial that up. But undoubtedly, there will be a special teams play. That hidden yardage, the field position battle will be huge in this one, especially with the defense as good as Georgia's is. If they can use that, even if at times they don't end up in points, which in Tennessee, you need to end up with points when you're on offense. If you're able to pin them deep, Blake, I mean, that just gives you more margin for error with some of those explosive plays that Tennessee generates.
I think the three of us have probably punted something around our house more often than Tennessee and Georgia have punted a football this year. Don't worry, no animals are harmed in that punting. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. And as always, just some kind of random stats here in terms of covers. This is such a game where I don't know. As we always say, we're not professional bettors, but if you are a bettor and you're looking for some interesting trends, I always find coverage has some of those kind of fun games to look at. I mean, really, there's not a lot here, because I think this is one where it's like, the under seems like one of those that you would, I think, lean on, just given Georgia's defense. Like, it seems like there's some positive trends in that direction. If you just look at the matchups between these two, Tennessee 1-5 against the spread in the last 6 games between these two teams. The over 5-1 in the last 6 games in Athens. But it's like, I think you throw all that out the window here, because this is just it's a different setup. Obviously, it's a different Tennessee team we've seen than we've seen in recent years in terms of their ability, in a game like this. So, Chris, I always give you some kind of fun stats, but I don't know that there's anything else beyond what we've mentioned when it comes to those kind of trends.
What is the number right now? What is the number that you're seeing out there?
I have seen the number go down to 8, which is not surprising, because I think that
11.5, I think.
Yeah. 11.5 was the open. It's gone down to 8, which I think I texted you guys, like, not surprised at all, because I think that's what Vegas wants in terms of knowing that the public's going to jump all over that. And that's what we've seen to this point, probably. I mean, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I have no doubt that there's a certain fan base that has jumped all over that 11.5 and has gotten it to this point. But obviously, there's a lot of other people in a matchup between 1 and 2, right? It's, obviously it's a little bit rare to see a number, probably. I assume that it kind of opens at that rate. So it's at 8 as we're recording on Sunday night.
And what's the latest over under that you're seeing?
65.5.
I saw 60. Okay, so that's gone up. It was 64.5. That's interesting because if you take what the teams have done, the average of what they've scored and given up, the under is more like 61.5. But with those numbers, with the line of Georgia -8 and an over-under of 65.5, that gives a predicted final of 37-29 in Georgia's favor.
All right. Well, it's time. Blayne
will let you start.
Okay, I'll take this. All right. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Tennessee has played phenomenal. Every one of those games, though, has been at home. Except, I know they went on the road to LSU, 11 o'clock kick. The Cajuns weren't even liquored up. They got a little bit of a break there.
Hey, they will be this weekend, by the way.
Yes. Let me tell you something. The Cajuns. We'll get to that game. Check out our Bama LSU preview. But what I'm telling you about this one is, I think it's going to be a raucous environment. One that obviously Tennessee's used to playing in raucous environments, but the momentum is always behind them there at Neyland. I think that you've got a team who's in ascension mode. They're climbing the ladder going up versus a team that is up on the top already. And, there's something being said for already having been there and already having done it. I'm not saying that you can take anything that Georgia did last year, because I know a lot of people aren't there anymore off that team. But I do know that there's a lot of people that are there on that team that were a part of those big games. I think overall home environment, the culture that Georgia has built and the offensive line play of Georgia, being able to keep Stetson Bennett clean and being able to distribute to different weapons and keep that Tennessee offense off the field, plus some of that special team stuff you said, Chris. I think Georgia wins this one. I think it's more like a 34 to 28 game, something along those lines, but I think Georgia wins.
You guys know I've been the high man on Tennessee all year long. And I keep, but on the flip side of that, I've always said, well, what, Blayne? I'm like, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Georgia has continued to be the man, despite everyone thinking that, perhaps there was going to be some, I don't think drastic drop off, but it was like, well, it may take Georgia a little time. Well, they're still sitting here undefeated as the reigning national champions. And now they get, the number 2 team in the country that is the rising team, like Blayne said, at home in Athens. But because I am the guy who's been high on Tennessee, and I said I feel like I have to pick them until they lose, I'm going to pick Tennessee to win this game. I think this one's a lot of fun, but again, would it shock any of us if Georgia sort of flexes its muscle here and shows just exactly what a reigning national champion can do in a game like this, with a lot of those pieces on the roster that were still there, part of that success to get to that point? Would not shock me at all. But Chris, I'm gonna have fun with this. Obviously I'm not betting on this, but just having fun with it. I feel like I have to keep going with the Vols here because I've been the high man from the start, and biggest game of the year, part 2. I will take Tennessee again here. But boy, that opening line's got me a little nervous about this one in terms of Vegas. Vegas always knows something, and they've certainly seen the data, I think, to support setting it at that point to start off. So,
yeah, I don't bet on sports, but if I did, I might have started this morning getting Tennessee, with Georgia minus 11.5. But in any case, this is one of these. I feel like whatever I pick is going to be wrong, because and I'm going to go. I'm going to go if Georgia wins the game, I'm going to go, well, duh. They're playing at home. You got the penalty situation, which is probably going to be exacerbated by the crowds. You got Stetson Bennett, who I didn't think looked very good against Florida, but hey, he had a bad little spell in the national title game, and I'd say he turned that around in his favor. So he's experienced. You got this whole, if you believe that defenses stop offenses, then you're going with Georgia. So you got all that on one side. On the other side, I've watched these teams both a lot lately. I just feel like Tennessee's playing better ball. And sometimes you just go with your gut. Maybe I'm going to be the guy next week with I was wrong about Tennessee in my little blue bubble here. But I'm going to go with Blake. I'm going to pick the Vols. I would not touch this game because I have no idea what's going to happen, but you got to make a pick. So I did. And I'll go the over, even though the numbers seem to say that I shouldn't. So
I like the under. I'm with Blayne on that one. I think the under is the best. I don't know why. I just think
keep this in mind. Georgia didn't have their best offensive game, and they put up 555 yards of offense last week. So it's not like they're people wanted to make this contrast of the two. Both of them are really, really good offensively. Georgia is elite defensively, and I think Tennessee is getting to the point where they are growing to the upper echelon defensively. So a great matchup. I think it'd be a close game either way.
Listen, just give me a good game. I don't care who's right, who's wrong. Just give me a great game. Give me a game of the year. That's all I want. So,
yeah, that's why I was going to say, to sum it up, collectively, we have no idea what's going to happen, but we can't wait to watch it, and we will. But anyway, we hope you have enjoyed watching this video. We preview every single SEC game every week. So best way to catch those, hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of basketball content coming up this week, and we'll do baseball when it's time for baseball season. But in any case, I am Chris Lee for Blake Lovell and Blayne Gilmer. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 14, presented by Stakes.